Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of the Cobblestone Path tutorial. In this one we're going to be looking at the base color. Okay, let's get started. So first we're going to start with a gradient map. Now like I've said, I have my original graph open on my auto monitor, so I'm just copy and pasting, and then I'm going to show you guys what the settings are. For this guy, let me just turn my music down a little bit. Alright, for this guy, we need to plug from this guy here. So we're going to follow that connection. Actually, that guy's really far back. I'm just going to create a connection there and then drag over to this guy. I'm just going to move this guy up here. I like my stuff kind of lined up from top to bottom. Alright, so the way I can show you these settings is just by clicking on the gradient editor and then clicking these guys for you guys. Very subtle differences. What I did is I actually have two values. It's like dark, light, dark, light, dark. So for this guy here, these are the settings. And then I have them spread out evenly in the position so you can know where these guys are placed by looking at the position here. So this one's at 0. This guy's at 0.25. And then this guy is just this guy again. But this guy's at halfway, so 0.5. And then this guy is this guy over here, and he's at 0.75. And then this guy's the same guy as the number 1 and 3, and he's at 1. And I did that just so that it doesn't go from dark to light or from light to dark. I wanted it to kind of bounce back and forth. So when using this grayscale here, it looks more varied rather than just going from one color to the other. Not a big difference, but alright. Once we have that, we're going to do an HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. Now, instead of, like, if this isn't the color I wanted and I wanted to change it, it would be a pain to go through all of these, especially sometimes when you do the pick gradient and you drag. Let me try it again over here. Okay, let me try it. Let me just do a bunch of this. Yeah, if you ever do use the gradient editor and then you have a bunch of these, it's a pain to have to, go through all of them and edit their values. So let me undo that. So sometimes, or often, you'll find yourself using an HSL to just kind of edit the overall previous look. So that's what I do here. You can see the settings there. So this will be the color for our initial base color for the bricks. Let me just plug this in. Where is it? Let me change this to plain. Let me change this to 5. Let's go with 6. Okay. So now that we have like a base coat, we're gonna move on to just kind of adding like this painterly stylized look. And as usual, there's many ways to do this. And we're gonna be working in layers, so right now we're just worried about the cobblestone or the bricks. So let me start by just copying this. Okay. So here we're just adding a very subtle layer on top of our base just to get some variety. And let's make sure we plug this guy in. I don't know, my monitor feels smaller even though it's the same one. And we're going to pull from this guy as usual. So I'm just going to make another connector and plug that into our vector warp grayscale. Okay. So this is very simple, nothing special here. Just start with a moisture noise into a scan just to kind of isolate, because right here it's pretty smooth, or there's like a large transition between dark to white. So here I just wanted to tighten it up a bit. If we turn this off, it's barely noticeable. So I wanted to have like more concentrated points of white. And then I blur it a little bit. I tend to blur it a little bit more often than usual with stylized textures. Obviously, that's not a rule, but usually I want things to be a little smoother. And then, we have our vector warp grayscale here. And then we feed that into the opacity and leave it a copy. Just turn down the opacity, and then we use this color here. You should be able to, if you're following along, you can create a uniform color and then use the little color picker, and then just on the video, you should be able to click on this to make it easier on yourself. It might be a little bit off, or maybe it's perfect, but you can also see the values here. And also, this is a 16 by 16. I lowered it so it doesn't cost the graph so much more energy, and you can lower it by going up here, top right. I set it to -7 and -7. Alright, moving on. Next, we're just gonna reuse a lot of some of what we just did. Now, instead of using another moisture noise every time, I'm just gonna reuse the same one, and then here, as usual, like I've done in many tutorials, I just take this one and then I rotate it 90 degrees, so that so the noise doesn't land on the same spot again. And then let me just continue this over here. Plug this in, and then let's connect our flesh fill random color that's been distanced out all the way. Okay, so we rotated 90 degrees here. Then another scan. Then our vector warp grayscale into this guy. And then we use this color here, just to kind of get some blue values on top, just to kind of create some contrast. If everything's red, or peach or whatever, it'll look a little flat. So that's the thinking there. Moving on, same thing. We reuse the same moisture. We rotated another 90 degrees. And for this one, it seems like we scaled it as well to get more noise. Then we do a scan. Then we need another one of these guys again. Let's connect this. And then we add kind of a bit of a greenish tint, or teal. I guess that's more teal. I know it's not looking that great, but trust the process. Okay. Moving on. Just plug this stuff in here. All right, so then here we have a clouds 1, or sorry, clouds 2. Pretty standard. Then we blur it a little bit, and then we connect that into the slope input for the slope blur color, similar to the slope blur grayscale. And here what I'm doing is I'm kind of just blurring via this slope the colors from before. Just to kind of give that like brushed look. And then once we do that, and I'm using min mode, I use a directional warp with the same blur warp grayscale, just to kind of warp it in a direction. just to kind of break it all up. Now it's okay that they're kind of slipping from one cobblestone brick to the other, because we're gonna fix it or bring in the basically the shadows using ambient occlusion to kind of give it back its give its definition back to the bricks. Um, we're gonna do another moisture noise, and then we're gonna just do another slope blur after the directional warp. Nothing special on this moisture, except I changed the seed so that it's different from the one we used back here. And then for this mode, I use blur for the slope blur here. Then once that's done, I am going to, okay, good. Use the vector warp color that we've been using to break up our noises. So we used the grayscale one. This is the color version. We gotta make sure we have this guy here. Let's plug that puppy in. And now it's kind of bringing back our like islands for our bricks, because right here they're kind of all over the place, as you can see here. So we're gonna just bring that back. And then we're gonna reuse this moisture noise here. I'm just gonna drag that over here. And then here we're using 0.19 for this scan. Then let's get another one of these to break up our noise. Goes into opacity, and then we're adding this kind of light blue. Just mixing in some color. Then here we add a layer of green on top. Now this was more intentional because we're going to have grass on the sides, our grass patches and clovers, and I kind of wanted to give some of that color representation on the bricks, because we're always trying to tell a story with our materials. And so the story here obviously is that, the grass has been like, or moss, or just grass residue has been, a little bit has been on the bricks. So we have a black and white spots too, nothing special. We increase the tiling, histogram scan. Then we use a non-uniform blur grayscale. Now, when I used to watch tutorial, I still watch tutorials, but I used to always think when I'm following along, how do they know, oh, to do this non-uniform blur grayscale after this? Like, how would you figure that out? For me at least, can't speak to everybody else, but for me it's just random and trial and error. I just throw in a bunch of nodes that I remember, and then, I see if I like the result. If I don't, I try another one. So it's never like, as I'm working on this, okay, I need black and white spots, transform 2D, histogram scan. The more you work with Substance Designer and the nodes, the more you'll realize, you'll learn the tools and you'll know what you need from your toolbox. Yeah, it's not like I know exactly what I need every single time. Sometimes you just plug in random noise until you get something you like. Okay, so we plug that in as usual. I think I did show the non-uniform there. Just make sure your samples and your blades are up. That's like your quality basically. Vector warp. copy set to 0.5. Have I been showing these guys? This guy's 0.37, and then this guy's 0.2. These are all copies, nothing special. Yeah, feel free to play with that. And then the color, that's what we used, this green. Now, as usual, I don't want to have to go back and change all of these and adjust every single one. They're in the general area that I want it. So then we're just going to use an HSL to kind of tune it. And you can see here that I just kind of brighten it up a bit and go into the red a little bit, just a tiny bit. This is very sensitive, so like even if you just move it a little bit, you're going to get a whole different color. I'm going to undo that. So yeah, we just made it brighter and we saturated it just a tiny bit more. Very subtle change there. Okay, so that's kind of like our base noisy, painterly, stylized paint job there. And then we're going to move down a little bit. And let's copy this guy. Boom. Now I like this method. So now that we've done all our base layering, I'm going to use ambient occlusion, and I need to pull from after cracks. So where is cracks? Cracks is here. We're gonna move all this down. We needed it past cracks. Where were you? There you are. So I'm just gonna create a connector here, and I am going to drag that out. Where are you? And that is going to go into the ambient occlusion. Now the reason why I have it there and not like after this stuff is because this is where we start like moving around our bricks, slope wise and height wise. And I don't really need that information for ambient occlusion because I want the ambient occlusion to be as if all my bricks are sitting at the same height and without any slope. So let me just show you what we did here. So just to bring back the definition of the bricks, we used ambient occlusion to give us the information between the bricks, and obviously because it's ambient occlusion, it is taking in consideration the edge wear, and we have the shadows kind of creeping over the edge wear, and then we're able to play with that information. So like I said, we pulled from after the cracks to create a connecting road into an ambient occlusion, and I changed the height depth. Feel free to play with that. And then we invert the ambient occlusion because I want to work with the shadows. I want the shadows to be white. You can see the shadows here kind of creeping in because of all of our surface damage on our bricks. We use an histogram scan after the invert. And then we do another histogram scan where it's like a little tighter on just the in-between. And then I use a crystals 2 or crystal 2 node. Set the scale to 4, and I just play with the disorder a little bit. And then I use the slope blur to get this effect from this. And I have it set to max because I want the how do we explain? I want the slope blur to cut outward into the brick. Normally I use min because usually I want it to kind of stay in, but let's just show you. If we use min, it's gonna just kind of cut into the white, but with max, it's gonna cut outward. And then with our scan from the bottom, we're just gonna blur it a little bit. And then I'm going to add both of these, and I have it set to 0.5. And then we blur it again just a little bit, and then we feed that into the blend mode. And then this is the color that we use. I don't know why every time I do like a set number, it just kind of changes. Now, if we look from the top, if we look over here, so we went from this to this, so we're bringing back that brick definition. And then if we remove the blur here, you can kind of see the difference. Now I want to avoid this like jaggediness here, so I just blur it a little bit. You could even probably say this is too much. Let's go with like 0.2. And yeah, the reason why I wanted to do it after the cracks and not after all the height and slope is because if I had gone after, then this color here would be down here because these bricks are higher up. So let me show you if I do this one. You can see that the color here went down, and that's because these are higher elevation, so the shadow is not reaching up there. But by using a previous one, then it thinks that it's down there. So sometimes you have to, think about that. All right, next, that's it for the brick color. Now we're gonna move on to the grass and the ground and everything else, everything that isn't brick. So let me just copy this first stage here. So I stopped recording and I kept going for like 5 minutes and then I realized, wait a second, I'm not recording, so I have to redo that bit again. Okay, I think we left off here where I pasted this. So let's continue. Okay, so this is going to be the ground. We need to plug in something here. And what we're going to plug in there is, let me just follow this path. Oh, okay, well first of all, we need to move this down over here, because this is where the dirt stuff starts happening, so this needs to be in that general area. And we're going to pull from this guy. Yeah, see, this is what I was doing before I realized I wasn't recording. We're going to pull from this blend here. Not after these guys, because these guys edit the range of the grayscale to kind of conform to the bricks and stuff. So we don't want, we're losing grayscale here. So I want to do it before we do this stuff here. So we're going to pull from this guy, because this is where we have a lot of the value left. And I'm just going to create a connection. I'm going to follow it. And I don't like my connections going through nodes, because then it's hard to follow them. So here we have a clean shot. And then I'm going to just pull from here. And I'm going to plug that over on the auto levels there. Just move this along. Okay, so that's plugging into an auto levels, and then obviously we use an auto levels to bring back the range of the grayscale. So we go from this to this. We get the darkest black and the brightest white. We have a standard clouds 2 here. I increased the scale to 2 and I changed the random seed just to get a different version of clouds 2 from all the previous ones. Then we slope blur it using blur this time just to kind of get this cool effect here for our dirt. Then that feeds into the opacity, set the copy, and then we have two dirt-like colors to kind of blend between for this grayscale. So for this top one, you can see the values there, and this one. I don't know why it keeps doing this. It should be 5, 4. Now this one's set to 16 by 16, but this one is not. This one's set to 2K. And it has to because the middle, whatever goes into the middle is what determines the overall resolution of the node. So keep that in mind. You don't want to accidentally change this to 60 because then it's going to lower the resolution on this. So if you go here, we make it that, then it's going to drive down the resolution, and then you're going to get this. Looks like dirt in Minecraft. This pixelated stuff. So keep that in mind. Rule of thumb, if it's in the middle, it should be full rest. Okay, so then we're going to use an HSL here just to kind of go into the red a little bit, increase the saturation a little bit more, and then make it brighter. Typical HSL. Now here, since this part's very simple, I'm just going to do a couple steps at once. Now, this is from the previous video, from the first part, 1A, where we started making all like this stuff down here that we didn't really use. That's because when I made this, the original graph, this stuff was made with the base color, but I ended up using some of it in the height, so I didn't want people to have to come back, go to like base color, and then like come back here. It wouldn't make sense because then we won't be able to really set this up. So I just kind of moved everything from base color down here, and then we just have it ready. So we got some of that out of the way. So for the first one here, we want to connect from after this blend mode here. So these are going to be the patches that we're going to be using for the dyeing patches of grass that are going to be like in the center. So this patchy stuff is what we're going to be using. So then you can see here copy set to 0.5, and then this is the color I used. And then you can kind of see the before and after. And then we do a similar thing, but this time we're going to be using the one from the levels that doesn't have anything coming after the output. We're going to drag that and plug that in there. And now this is supposed to represent the less dead patches of grass. So this is a little bit more green. And you can see the colors there. Then we slope blur it with this transform 2D that's kind of just sit here. We're going to pull from that guy. That's going to go in here. And now we're going to get this like painterly look. And it's set to blur. Alright, so now this is about where I realized that I wasn't recording anymore. Okay, so that's like the dirt. So now we're going to add the grass. And now we're going to start painting the patches of grass. So here we start with a moisture noise. And I have it set. I have changed the pattern size to 2. I think by default it's set to 1. We have a gradient map here. The first one is this. Second one is this. And these are obviously at both extremes, so 0 and 1. And the left one is darker. And then the right side's a little more vibrant and brighter a little bit. Then we do an HSL here to kind of darken it. And you'll see why I darken it later. But this is going to be basically the background. We're going to have the patches of grass sitting on top, and then on top of the patches of grass, we're going to have the clover sitting on top. So this is going to be like the background. Whatever bleeds through the patches of grass and the clovers, what doesn't bleed through will be this color. Okay, so now let's copy paste this bit. Plug that in here. Make sure I'm still recording. Yes, I am. And then we need something for the levels here, and we're going to plug in our patches of grass. And you can see I left this here because I had already done this part, but we're going to create a connection, and it's going to be after the levels coming out of the tile sampler. So we're going to pull from there, and that's going to go in there. We're just going to line this up a little bit better. Because we're eventually going to run through here, and I don't want to run through this stuff. Okay, so then I play around with the levels here. I'm just round this down for you guys. And we basically are taking, like I said, the previous one, and we're making it brighter using the levels node here. And then we're going to use a scan to get the mask of the maximum reach of the grass. So this is our mask. That gets plugged into the opacity. And then from this levels, we're going to plug it into a gradient. And I think I just copy pasted this guy and then changed it a little bit, but maybe I didn't. I don't remember. But these are the settings for this gradient map. And then here we're able to, you can change it as you like, but it has like a bit of a highlight, or like this inside part is like darker than the edges here. So that creates nice contrast. And then here I use an HSL to make it a little bit more green. Because like I said, we have 3 layers: the background grass, the patches, and the clovers. So I want them to be a bit of a contrast between the background and the second layer. And then we feed that into the top. And now you can see here that that first layer is whatever the grass doesn't cover. So you can see a little bit there. And set the copy and set the 1. So then we get this. Then, now this part starts to get a little bit hard to follow, so we're just going to take it nice and slow. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of shadowing. Where do I need to pull from this scan? Yeah, okay. So we're going to pull from this scan and plug that into our ambient occlusion here. So I'm using this mask. So if we try to visualize this mask, this stuff is like at the very top, and then this stuff is at the bottom, right? So that's going to give us shadowing around the mask, like this. So now I want to take that black information and use it as shadowing. We're missing one thing here. Before we walk through this, let me plug what's missing here, which is, we have to zoom out. And this guy, if you were following along, you should have this ground only red box here. We need to pull from this. So we should have like a road down here. Yes, we do. Now, where are we? We're like there. So I'm going to just make it over here. I'm going to pull from that. And that's going to go into the top. Okay. So now this mask is the gradient of the strength. So we need this. Otherwise, if we don't have this, then our ambient occlusion and like all our detail is going to be evenly distributed, and we want it to have a fall off towards the center, because that's where like the grass and the clover start fading away, and it starts turning into this brown. So if you look here, it starts fading. So now here, if I hide and unhide, you can see that the shadowing from our ambient occlusion is more noticeable here than it is towards the center. So if I hide and unhide here, it's almost like not visible. And that's because it's going to, it's using this. And if we turn off our Boolean for ground only, or on, I guess, you can see that the shadowing is now the same as it is on the outside. That's because now there is no this thing got changed, right? Because we set it up so that if the boolean is set to false, then use this guy. You can see there it says false, input to false, and then if it's true, if we're doing ground only, then do this where it's all white. So that means it's all turned on, as opposed to here where it starts fading off towards the middle. So this is very important multiply blend here. Okay, so I think we left off here. So right, so we have an ambient occlusion from this guy. Default settings. I invert it to get the white to turn the shadowing white. And now the shadow is the only thing that's white here. And then, we multiply with that mask that we spoke about. And then we feed that into the opacity. And then I just have this at the pure black. And then that gives us our shadowing. And like I said, it's stronger here and less in the middle. And I just added a little bit of shadowing because I wanted there to kind of break up the background with this secondary layer here. All right. Okay. Now bear with me. Let that copy, paste. Okay. Now this is going to go right here. Now I know there's a lot going on. Let's start with this guy up here. So we're going to have an auto levels up here. And what we're going to plug into that is going to be our clovers straight from the tile sampler. So we're going to pull from here. And that's going to go there. And we're just going to move this down so things aren't looking weird. Like that. Alright, so that's going to plug into this auto levels here. And then we need something else to plug into this guy who's just kind of hanging out. And we need this guy here. So after the tile sampler, after the levels, the first blend there, the multiply. This is where we multiplied out the bricks. So we want this guy. And we want this mask to go in here, which is going to connect into this histogram scan. Alright, so what is happening here? And let's connect this guy next. Actually, let's just walk you up to it. So we connected this, like I said, into the histogram scan. Oh wait, we need something for this guy too. Where does this guy come from? Okay, so this invert grayscale is going to connect from the last scan, from this guy. So this is the mask of the clovers. Actually, no, this is a mask of the grass with the clover mask subtracted. So you can see this is supposed to be a clover. And this is supposed to be just the grass minus the ground and minus the clovers. I'll explain more once we plug this stuff in. And then we invert it. And then we need something in here. So this should be a multiply. And then we need that same mask that we used for the patches of grass. So we're going to do another connection. So it's coming from this guy, the red box. And that's going to go on top there. Because we have to, like we've done before, we need that gradient there. Okay, so then you can see the clovers are now showing. And they're cut off. But that's fine because that's the brick. Okay, so what in the world did we just do? Let me explain. So let's start with this guy. So this is just an auto levels coming from the clover tile sampler. Okay, and then we feed that into a gradient map. And then these are the settings. Just gonna go through this fast. We're almost done, I think. Yeah, we're almost done. So those are the values for that gradient. And then I use an HSL. I wanted the clovers to be more green than the patches of grass and then the background. So you can see the settings there. And then that's going to feed into the top part here of the blend mode after the shadowing of the patches of grass. Okay, now what's happening? So this over here is just the coloring of the clovers. Easy. Now this histogram scan is coming from here, which is the clovers, right? And here I edited here I raised them because I wanted them to be higher than the patches of grass. And then here we multiplied via the mask of the bricks. So because the bricks are black, anything times black is black. So we got rid of, so we used that mask to kind of cut out where the bricks are. So you can tell there's a brick here, there's a brick here. So now this is going to become the mask for the clovers after the bricks. And then I just jack up the position and the contrast all the way up, and that's this new mask. So this mask is just clovers with the bricks cutting out the clovers. Then we have another mask. Now this mask is coming from this, which is, so this mask, or this blend mode, is the patches of grass that have been fading out towards the center into the patchiness from the previous episode. And then I create a mask out of it. So I again position and contrast at the 1. And this mask is excluding the clovers and the background. So this is just grass, patches of grass. Then I invert it. So now I have the background grass and the clovers. Then I multiply that together to remove these guys from the clovers. And then we add our fading effect. Make sure I'm not missing these settings for you guys. And then that's going to go into the opacity. So if we look here, you can see the clovers are fading out as you go towards the center. Now they're going to fade out more once we layer this with the dirt, because this is going to go on top. So now if we turn the boolean back on, you can see the clovers return to their full strength because they're not fading anymore. So let's undo that, turn that back off. Now that we did that, just plug this stuff in. Now I want to borrow the same black here. So this is going to go all the way over here. And it's going to go into the top because now we're doing the shadowing for the clovers. Whoops. And then we're continuing this connection. This is a multiply set to 0.25. And now we're going to worry about this stuff here. So what I need to plug into here is the clovers after the levels. So I'm going to create a connection down here. And I'm just going to pull from it. So it's coming after the levels of the clovers. And then this is going to go in here. Yep, okay. So what we're doing here is we're going to shadow the clovers. Oh, but we need this guy again. And you probably guessed it, this is going to be that gradient, the sloping. Okay. So yeah, so we went from this, so where it's kind of flat on the clover, to now having some shadowing below it and going down the center here to kind of show that crease in the clover folding. All right. All right, so let's explain. So we took this from after this level, so we just have a separate road here for it. We use an ambient occlusion to give us our shadowings, just like we did with the patches of grass. So we have our shadowing for what's under the clover and then for the crease. And then here we have our mask, which is just clover mask. So just the clovers are white. We subtract these values from the mask to get this. So now this is giving us the crease of the clover, right? That's this stuff here. And then on top here, we have another ambient occlusion, and this is going to give us the shadowing underneath. I think I did another one because we kind of lose some of this information in here. So I just used another one. But this was just the mask. So that doesn't have like the crease down the middle. And that gives us this. And like we did with the patches of grass, I inverted it. And now I have both information. Now I have the shadowing and the crease shadowing. And then I just take them both and I do a max lighten. And then here is where I add the gradient. We went over that. So we multiply that. So then it fades out. And again, if we turn off the Boolean, it's going to go flat. And then this is going to fit into the opacity here. And then that's the previous stuff. So a lot of clovers here, and they start kind of fading towards the middle. All right. Now this part is not complicated, but it's going to look a little spaghetti-like. So let's just I'm just gonna copy it all and we're just gonna go through it. I think that might just be the best way to do it. Now don't be afraid, don't turn off the tutorial, don't scratch your head, trust. Okay, so we're gonna start with the easy stuff. Okay, so remember this guy, the slow blur, our dirt, we're gonna pull from him and we're gonna plug that into an HSL. And you can see the values for that HSL here. Start with that, pretty easy. Now we're gonna go back over here and we're gonna start, and just double click here so everything kind of computes. Okay, so just to give you a brief rundown, I start adding some of the fading, we add the dirt, we add our flip, and then we do some final editing. Nothing crazy. Okay, so we're gonna start with a gradient linear 1. So we're gonna make another secondary fading effect. I levels that. I mirror it. I use the Perlin noise. I slow blur a little bit, nothing crazy. Then this breaks up into two. We have an inverted grayscale here. And that is going to feed into this copy blend, into the opacity of the copy blend here. Now I would stop there for that, and now let's go back over here. So after all our mumbo jumbo from before, we are going to do an HSL coming from it. Okay. And this is where I kill the grass a little bit. So I desaturate it. I go into like the yellows, and I make it brighter. So this is supposed to be like my dead patches of grass, my dead clovers, my dead background grass, right? So I connect this guy into the middle of this blend mode, and then the dead grass goes on top. And then I use this invert grayscale from our new path mask. I invert it, and then I plug that in here. So then it's telling it, okay, wherever there's white, have this. But since we have a gradient here, then you can see that it's gradating. I don't know if it's a word or not, but it's changing from green and it's changing towards that dead grass. So that's basically what's happening here. I'm just gonna highlight it. So that's this stuff. Okay. Now, don't worry about this just yet. These guys. Don't worry about this connector yet, because that's for this. Okay, so then once we have our dead path, we're gonna feed that into the top of our foreground of our blend, set to copy and set to 1. And then the dirt is going to continue into the middle. So you should have both of these guys. And then we're going to use this guy that's going to go into the opacity. Because now we're using this to tell this where to be. So we're telling this to be only here. And then wherever there's black, it's going to give us this. So then we get this. So we still have our gradient here, and then we have our dirt path overpowering or on top. All right. So now that we have that, now we need our Boolean because it needs to know when to switch between these two. So spawn in another or copy a color Boolean, switch color if you have one. I don't know if we've used one. Actually, I don't think we have. No, we haven't used a color one. So you're going to want to spawn in a switch color because now we're working with color. We need these orange input nodes. And this guy, this is the no path version, right? So if we follow the track, that is going to go into the true. So it's going to go on top and then go here, and then you can reuse the same Boolean. So right here, it'll say ground only or whatever you named it. That's going to go into the top, and then when the Boolean is off, it's going to play this. So this goes into the bottom. Now, whatever your Boolean is set to, it's going to be HSL'd. And then these are the settings for that HSL. So here I just play around with the value, with the overall value one last time. So we go from this into this like bright, vibrant version of everything. Okay, we're just about done. We're out of the woods. Now we need to bring all of this that we just did back into this. So let's get our blend here. As usual, this goes into the middle. This goes on top. And we need to we need something in here. Otherwise, we're just gonna get this. So we need our mask. So if we go back to here, this is our mask, where it's either brick or not brick. So we're gonna reuse this. Oops. Misclicked. Make sure I'm still recording. Now I'm paranoid that I'm doing the video without recording. I think we're good. And then we're just gonna plug this in, and it's gonna say, okay, you know, where it's black, do this, and where it's not, do this, and then boom, we get this, and that just copies it to 1. All right, and then for the last little bit, I don't want to confuse you guys, so we're gonna actually do it this way. Let's drag this stuff back a bit. Let's plug this in here. All right, now let's just plug in this ambient occlusion here, and we are going to pull from before we add the clovers or anything. So I believe this is where we add the clovers and grass. They're kind of hard to see because it's not really seen in the height information. It's mostly just seen in the color. So we're gonna make a connector there, give it a little hat, and we're gonna use this guy. And this is gonna go in there. So this is just ambient occlusion without any of the foliage, basically. It's 0.075. I invert it. I tighten it up a little bit so we get a little bit of a tighter shadowing. Then I blur it a little bit, and then I play around with the levels. Now, this is a little bit more advanced. Not really, but the reason why I tighten the shadows up a bit more here is because in the marmoset tutorial that I plan on doing for this specific material, and I can do other ones for the other materials. If there's a lighting setup that you like, I can go over those. But basically, I needed to have this shadow not reach the edge because in my marmoset rendering, actually let me pull it up. Okay. So basically, if that shadowing, okay, let me back up. So here I have two textures, right? I have the main path texture. So this is with the boolean off. And then on the sides here, there's actually another texture here and another texture here. And for that, I'm using the boolean turned on. So there's two textures here. And the reason why I don't want the shadowing to spill into the edge, because this is going to be kind of like shadowing, and if this reaches the end, then it's going to continue over here. And if I change to the grass, you would see the shadow stop suddenly. And then, because I'm using a different texture here, and that texture does not have brick information. So you would see like this fall off wherever the texture, I think it's like about here. So to keep it seamless, I didn't want anything spilling over. Because originally I had my bricks splitting or being split in the center because then I wanted to continue on this side. And then I moved the bricks in so that there were its own railing of bricks on both sides. But then I realized, okay, I need to actually have some space so that whatever happens to these bricks don't spill over to the edge. And I'll probably talk more about this in the marmoset tool bag tutorial after, but I figure I'd touch on it now. Okay, so we took the ambient occlusion, we inverted it, we played around with the values, and then we feed that into the opacity. Now, what we need to do is actually, from this HSL that we just did, I'm going to create a split, and then this is going to go on top. So what I'm doing here, if you look here, right now it's either brick and not brick, but I wanted to carry over some of the color from this and place it on top So it's almost like the dirt and the green from the grass, right? Like when it rains and it starts mixing with the dirt. So it's kind of painting the edges of the brick. And that's what I was trying to achieve here. And it kind of blends the bricks into everything else. And I think that looks really nice. So you can see like the fall off here is like harsh, right? So then we kind of soften it a bit. And we kind of like make both of these two separate materials or textures into one. We make them blend into each other. It's almost like the bricks are becoming part of the ground. Uh, and then I'm going to copy this. Okay, I'm just going to disconnect everything so we don't get confused. And this guy is going to go in the bottom. And then this guy is going to go on top. And basically, this is just another wait, actually. Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's just another switch color here. Because we don't want it to apply this, because this is only for when there's bricks. We don't need this like blending if we're not doing bricks. So just need another switch here. And then just to top it off, I'm just gonna do this all at once. Actually, we'll just do it all at once just to wrap it up here. Just delete that guy or move it over there. Okay. So I shouldn't have done it this way, but it's okay. So first, let's start with this guy. We need a normal node set to intensity of 20. And for this guy, we're actually going to plug in after everything has been set and done for height. So just anywhere after everything. Just going to make that there. I'm just going to plug that in. Crap, missed. And there. And that's going to give us this. So now here you can see we have patches of grass, we have clovers, we have everything. Now this is going to go into a curvature smooth, and this is what we do in all of our tutorials, or at the end of all of them, mostly. We have a curvature smooth into a default gradient map, nothing special here, just a default. And then that goes on top. And then we change it to overlay. And this just helps make everything pop, kind of like adding some highlight. You can see the before, after. And we just have it set to 0.5. Feel free to play around with that. Then we do a curvature sobel into a histogram scan, and we play around with it to kind of just get the edges, the hard edges, like the highlights of everything, grass, clovers, everything. Then we blur it a little bit. Otherwise it would look like this. It's actually not too terrible, but I don't like that it stops and it doesn't go all the way down the blade of grass. But we blur it a little bit so it's more noticeable on the upper ones, on like the higher height ones. And then that goes into the opacity here. And then we do copy for this one. But what I do, since these are kind of like highlights, then I want it to be a brighter version of whatever came before. Let's stick with this. So after the switch, I make a connector going up into an HSL. And then this HSL is just a brighter version of whatever came before. And then using this mask for the edges, we get our highlights. And if you want to make the highlights more noticeable, you just got to go into your HSL here and just turn up the lightness. That's obviously too much, but probably go with like, that's too much. Probably go with like 35. I think that's probably better. That's just at the copy. Then, as usual, and it's no penguin fashion, just throw in a sharpen. Just to kind of make everything pop. Maybe it's too much for you. You can turn it down or just not have it at all. And then that leads us to base color. Now, as usual, let me know if I missed something or messed something up. I'm still recording, right? Yeah. Yeah, I hope that wasn't too confusing. But I am trying to I'm trying to learn some new stuff myself and passing it on to you guys. So we can't always be making like very nice, simple, floor tiles. We gotta expand. We gotta expand, fellow penguins. Okay. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's anything you didn't like, liked, etc. All right, guys. Next one we'll be covering roughness, and this one will be super short. The roughness is not that complicated. I'm looking at it now. It's maybe like 12 steps or so, and they're very simple. All right, guys. Have a good one. Where's the off button on this thing?